Hello and welcome. It is great to have you here. We're streaming live on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you're a marketer or an entrepreneur who's determined to tell a story that sells, then boy, do I have a treat for you today. We're doing our live weekly stream all about business storytelling. We've got tips, we've got frameworks, we've got it all. We're going to talk about how you can generate demand and accelerate sales pipeline with business storytelling. We're going to teach you how to do this without having to learn specialist, confusing entertainment frameworks. You know what I mean. We won't be teaching you the hero's journey, the 7 types of story, Kurt Vonnegut's 8 tips. You get the point. You know that great storytelling can help your business, but it's hard to find the time to become a master storyteller. It's not your fault. Most of the storytelling advice out there is for entertainment storytelling. You simply don't have the time to become a master storyteller, do you? But you want to benefit from it. What if I could help you by telling you there's one single thing that you could do to help with all of that? That single thing is business storytelling. My goal for this presentation is to help you if you're one of these 2 types of people. For the natural born storytellers here today, we will show you how to take your whole company on the storytelling journey, resulting in an increase in profitability with business storytelling. For those of you who are utterly new to business storytelling, you will get some simple frameworks to get going with business storytelling today. So in the next 60 minutes, my goal is to get you to believe that business storytelling is the key to unlocking unrealized business profitability. I'm going to show you my proprietary frameworks that will make it simple for you to achieve that result. As a marketer and entrepreneur myself, I know how much frustration there can be in business. For over 20 years in corporate America, I had a variety of marketing roles. I was even chief storyteller for a business division of Microsoft. For years, and even as a passionate storyteller, I struggled to apply storytelling in business. There is so much that you have to manage in your day job. You might not feel like you've got time for storytelling. We're going to change that today. You also might feel that you need to be focusing on every single marketing channel for fear that if you fail in one area and you check any of all the boxes, that you're going to fail in all the areas. There's just so much to worry about. You might also think, I got to get on the latest social media platform. These are pressures we're under every single day. You don't need to be doing all of this stuff. What you need to get right is your business storytelling. Like many of you, I once thought storytelling was reserved for movies, books, and theater. And while I've always appreciated good storytelling, my career was built through science and technology. And I didn't think stories had much to do with those fields at all. However, I came to learn that storytelling propped up everything in business for every business in every industry. Yes, communication and marketing, but even more than that. Internal alignment, employee motivation, even partnerships. My mother was a scientist, a biologist focused on virology and zoology. She taught my sisters and me to ask questions, to develop hypotheses, and to test our ideas. We were taught to seek facts, data, and truth. But she was also a poet and an author. My father reinforced this. He was an electrical engineer who enjoyed a sales and marketing career spanning 5 decades in the high-tech industry. He inadvertently indoctrinated me into the world of tech, Intel specifically to start off with. I grew up surrounded by tales of Silicon Valley, and I highly recommend Accidental Empires for all the fun stories contained within. We were soaked in story from a young age. Both my parents read to us voraciously. I still have fond memories of being curled up with Dad and one of my sisters on the couch as he read us Lord of the Rings. This actual copy, this is my mum's 1969 edition, the first time all of the Lord of the Rings books were published in one tome together. And so I took that passion for science and followed my mother's footsteps into creative writing and my father's footsteps into technology when I started my career in Intel's marketing department. Got any fans of Red Dwarf in the audience today? This is a 2002 shot from an Intel Counter-Strike gaming event that I helped manage at the Science Museum in London. And yes, that is Lister from Red Dwarf. In the early days of my career, I thought storytelling was really best suited for presentations, ad campaigns, and messaging. I didn't explicitly see it as being something to use in other areas of the business. Something else I discovered in those early days was Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, a popular read at Intel. I absolutely loved how it framed this chasm, how businesses that failed to connect with the early majority would fall into the chasm. It became a North Star for me. If a business is nothing else, it's about connecting your product with the most lucrative of your potential markets, the early majority. Storytelling is about connecting people to ideas. Without realizing it, I started applying storytelling to my everyday work. In one early instance, I created a superhero theme for a partner account manager training event at Intel. In another, I created a James Bond style sales campaign for Microsoft. Eventually, efforts such as these led to me being internally recruited as chief storyteller for Microsoft Dynamics. Just as I was planning on leaving the company. Wow, I thought it was all official. I was finally going to get paid for storytelling. Those novels can wait. The 2 novels still need some editing, I'll tell you that much. Little did I realize that the journey I was about to embark on would result in me being able to help others unlock a big business secret. It's not about entertainment storytelling at all. Business storytelling may be related, but it's different. And I'm going to share with you why it's different and how to use it. At Intel, a mentor and friend of mine, Nick Drew, once said, always find if somebody else has done it before. It'll save you time and energy. In other words, don't reinvent the wheel. If you can avoid doing so, then just don't do it. I've always kept that in mind. And as such, I was keeping an eye out for existing approaches that I could leverage in my work as a newly minted chief storyteller. I sought to do the same in my new role and went on the hunt for existing wheels. But honestly, I struggled. I had turned down external job offers to take this role. I had to make it work. I did discover that people had been trying to apply storytelling in business as a way to cross the chasm. But there was really a problem with how a lot of people were approaching it. Now, to be clear, there is some really interesting advice out there that uses storytelling. For example, I found tons of fascinating frameworks for storytelling brought out of hundreds of years of story crafting and literature in the movie industries, like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. In my exploration, easy for me to say, I also found useful approaches to help with improving presentations. I loved Nancy Duart's Resonate and techniques like Bo Eason's for telling your personal story for impact. As I dug into these various methods and classic storytelling models, I just couldn't find the wheel that I was looking for. But the available storytelling frameworks themselves have been created for a different end goal, entertainment. And that was the problem I was discovering. The hero's journey can be 10, 12, or even a whopping 17 steps. Phrases like rising and falling action, character arc, were just too much of a heavy lift for busy professionals like my team. No matter how many rabbit holes I went down, I just couldn't find a storytelling wheel that worked for the repeatable application of storytelling in business. Just couldn't find it. So as Chip and Dan Heath explained in their wonderful book, Made to Stick, we're all subject to something called the curse of knowledge. This curse makes it hard for people outside of our area of expertise to understand things that we just simply get. What is effortless for you as an expert or me as an expert requires much energy for a non-expert to understand. Storytelling is no different. So when I and others tried to use entertainment storytelling frameworks in business, the wheels just didn't roll. Maybe I did need to invent a new wheel after all. But I had a job to do, so I decided to focus on the essence of storytelling. I would use the entertainment frameworks and be a story interpreter, a focus on outside-in customer centricity, a focus on the customer as the hero, on their journey to hopefully purchase from us. My team and I created some terrific customer showcase films that focused on the customer and their experience. This reinforced for me how powerful storytelling was, but it also was reinforcing the issue. Not all content was a beautiful video. Not all stories had to be big and bold. The power in story structures wasn't just about big, beautiful, epic stories. I was discovering more than ever that the power of storytelling wasn't limited to movies and books. Storytelling is how we as humans connect. And since business is still human to human, I realized storytelling plays an essential role. Externally, in connecting to the customer and to partners, and internally, connecting to individuals and teams within an organization and bringing them together. Thought experiments, problem solving, strategy, and more. I was experiencing storytelling's impact on business, but I felt like I was only just scratching the surface and I wanted to do more. I wanted to go further than just injecting elements of story into traditional marketing models. And while there is value and use for those models, I also wanted to go beyond big, beautiful, epic stories. I started to wonder what actual business storytelling wheels might look like. I was inspired to take my experiences outside of my corporate role and start my own company to put all my energy into helping people solve this mystery of business storytelling. But I had a young family at home and my wife was on sabbatical from her career after the birth of our second child. Quitting was not an option. Everything changed on July the 19th, 2015. Tragedy struck. My parents were both killed in a car crash. Now, I won't go any further into this sad tale, but the fact that life is short was never more apparent to me. Unsurprisingly, this became a major turning point in my life. It was actually against that backdrop of profound grief that I left Microsoft. What on earth was I thinking, right? I tapped into the inner resources I've been gifted by my mother and father, creativity, technology, a love of storytelling, and I honored them in the best way I knew how, helping others find success in their business and lives with the power of storytelling. That's why I formed Go Narrative. I started working on those business storytelling wheels so that you don't have to. It's true that I founded Go Narrative as a way to help businesses use the power of storytelling, but it was really about helping others be successful in doing so. In particular, technology companies. I love tech, and I wanted to help amazing technologies invented by great people to flourish. Marketers and entrepreneurs are a creative bunch, and you can create a lot with our frameworks. You can create amazing stories, amazing content, and most importantly, authentic, amazing customer experiences. Now, the problem with being both driven and creative is it can result in a mix of check every box syndrome mixed with the bright, shiny object syndrome Trust me, I know the last one particularly well. The truth is, you don't need to check every marketing box, including the latest fancy social media channel. What you need is better storytelling. Remember that big misconception of storytelling, that it's not just for children, movies, and books? It's not. Those are just artifacts of what storytelling actually is. And if some artifacts can be used for pure entertainment, some artifacts can be used for business engagement. When you apply storytelling in the right way, you are more authentic, your messaging is better, your executives are more relatable, your salespeople have increased confidence, you generate increased demand, and you accelerate your sales pipe velocity. Plus, everything is more aligned and has greater integrity. Sounds good, right? I had seen this power and I wanted to spread the word. Honestly, I found the entertainment frameworks pretty hard to apply to business, and I want to save you that hassle. Because of this, and even after the founding of Go Narrative, I relied on existing frameworks. As I worked to decode storytelling for business, for you, I kept chugging on the concept of delivering our clients what we call a strategic messaging foundation. I did so using my experience creating value propositions, positioning, personas, customer journeys, and content marketing. Selling those things was a great place to start, and we did make decent money selling it. But unlocking business storytelling remained the crown jewel that I was seeking to do to help you. Literature and film found their frameworks in things like The Hero's Journey or Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. But these are just artifacts, right? Artifacts of what storytelling really is all about. They're not actually storytelling. They're a form of storytelling. And that's the big issue that a lot of folks actually bump into in this space. Storytelling is more than movies and books, and I was determined to unlock storytelling for business. Storytelling is how we make sense of the world. Do you want your customers to make sense of you? But without simple, practical business frameworks, all there was these entertainment frameworks. So I continued to play the role of interpreter. The more I practiced the art and the science of storytelling, the more I realized that storytelling is a value problem. And business is all about value. For our ancestors, the stories of value were told around the campfire. Value was things like which berries were edible and where was the shelter. Evolution did its thing and rewarded with survival the tribes that practice storytelling. Now, there are a few important things people get wrong with business storytelling, and I discovered two carnal sins in particular. What is sin number one? Not including people and their transformation. This holds true even when the story is short form content, like a tweet or ad copy. I thought back to my time in corporate America. I was sitting in the crowd of employees as the executive took the stage at a corporate all-hands meeting. "We have a great story," he called out. The crowd was buzzing. The executive had just been promoted to CMO, and the all-hands was his moment. "And I'll tell you what it is." The crowd leaned in. "Our products work great together, and our new SKUs and pricing are exactly what our customers need." What? I waited for a story. Nothing. This was the CMO. There was no story. The presentation wasn't structured around story. There were a few anecdotes. That was it. And this was only one example of where I was seeing the term story being abused. It was a product strategy, a marketing priority, not a story. Focus on logic and argument, and you inspire your audience to argue with you. Stories are about people and their overcoming of obstacles, about transformation. This is the why of storytelling. What's that second sin? Well, it's not including a what, an element of value. It's the whole point of storytelling, to deliver valuable information, the head and the heart. When you do, your audience can act on a transformation to lead them to a better life. They see this simulated for the first time in a story. When you hear a story, when any of us hear a story, we actually simulate that in our minds. It teaches us how to create similar real-world experiences. It shows us how life can be better. I absolutely love this quote from Jonathan Gottschall. Fiction is an ancient virtual reality technology that specializes in simulating human problems, including your customers' problems, no less. But as I discovered, it's difficult to apply entertainment storytelling structures to business. Just doesn't really work. It's like sort of triangle peg round hole situation, right? You might get so far, but really using it as a repeatable multi-tool for your business just isn't going to work if you don't use the right structure. And those entertainment story structures are not the right structure. Stop using them. So I continue to play this interpreter role while focusing on the work of crafting strategic messaging foundations. But the dream was real. What if I could forge story frameworks specifically for business people? Wouldn't that be amazing? My mother's earliest memory was of her grandfather in a forge, no less. He was a blacksmith, and he took my mother and her two sisters down into his smithy one day under pain of death should they tell their mother, my grandmother. She would not have been happy at all. My mother was only 5 years old. My great-grandfather helped them lift up the hammer, crashing it down onto the hot metal. Sparks flew. Smoke filled the room. The horseshoe was thrust into the water to temper it, then back into the forge, and then hit again. Forging things takes work. And if I could do the work for you, then you wouldn't have to do as much. If I could get you those frameworks, you could go further. Just like the blacksmith doesn't have to recreate the anvil every single time. It was through this experience that I forged the frameworks that I'm going to share with you today. I was on a mission to find a way to simplify and unlock storytelling for business, to do so in a way that's accessible. And I did it. I've created a set of tools, 3 in particular, to enable you as a business person to find success through storytelling. And here's the kicker: without relying on entertainment frameworks. Simple, accessible, repeatable. That's what we've got for you today. Memorizing a bunch of detail can be a heavy lift, can be some hard work, right? It reminds me of my computer science and business degree. It had a fair amount to memorize, like marketing, for example, 4 Ps, cash cows. To be fair, there was a lot that we'd had to learn. You've probably been there too. We have to remember and recall many things for success on a daily basis. We all have lots of plates to spin. Having to keep all those plates spinning can be tricky. Every time Twitter releases a new feature, I get anxious about not jumping on the bandwagon fast enough. For ages, I tried to maintain a Go Narrative Instagram account before I cut my losses and decided to focus on LinkedIn and Twitter. And of course, there's a constant flow of new channels like TikTok and Clubhouse. The reality is, no matter the medium, the message needs to use storytelling to be effective. When I was playing my interpreter role to help our clients, I discovered Paul Smith's book and tools. I started using his CAR framework: context, action, results, from Lead with a Story. CAR helped me bridge the mental gymnastics of entertainment frameworks with business. I liked CAR, but it wasn't quite enough. With Paul Smith, I had also found the first story structure, quite frankly, that wasn't explicitly tied to an entertainment framework. But it wasn't quite what I was after. It did, however, inspire me to forge ahead with crystallizing my process and frameworks so I could share them with you. In the end, my realization was actually quite simple. Stories are like salt. Salt is elemental. Without it, food tastes pretty bland. Some people even think watermelon is improved with salt. I'm not really sure. Jury's out. Let's put it that way. What do you think? You want your message to be tasty, though, don't you? Stories make everything tastier. I wanted to create a tool as simple as salt, something anyone can add to their marketing dishes, sprinkle them on. And as you know, none of the tools, channels, or features that you have or that exist out there matter if the message that's going through them is not tasty. It's true. Storytelling is an essential element, just like salt. Don't prioritize the channels. Prioritize storytelling, then the channels. Now, some of you are probably thinking, Matthew, too much salt is a bad thing. Yes, it is. And that is the exact problem with entertainment storytelling. They bring too much salt. To avoid that, I prioritize the focus on three key things. Number one, focus on the customer as the hero, using personas to guide our decisions. Demonstrate the overcoming of challenges that these people or personas have or had. And focus less on products and services and more on the people whose lives your products affect. If you do nothing else, do this. It'll keep you outside in honest. We've used this approach along with my storytelling interpreter role to craft sales presentations, websites, and other content, such as these examples. We were crafting strategic narratives with an early version of our narrative framework. And I was working on crafting salt simple tools for business storytelling, the ones you're actually going to hear about today. And it was awesome. Fantastic work. Love it. Our strategic narratives came as a part of this strategic messaging foundation in what we took to calling our go-to-market playbooks, accompanied by value propositions, positioning frameworks, messaging frameworks, personas, buyer journeys, and content strategies. I was finally feeding a family of four, despite having shed the shackles of corporate America. The cool thing about personas, positioning, frameworks, all that stuff is that they're ultimately the business components of business storytelling. So our strategic messaging foundation work ultimately was the key that enabled me to figure out how to rewrite storytelling for business. When our clients invested in our playbooks, they see real results. For example, a mid-size IT services firm here in Seattle saw a complete shift and consistency and unity in all their efforts across marketing, sales, and their consulting delivery practice. A corporate client saw over 40% increase in registrations for their event series by applying our method. Another client saw a campaign landing page improvements, including inbound and search impact was 3.78x increase in the page views, and then the page actions on those pages was a 7.35 times increase. That's pretty big. The whole point of these frameworks is to craft useful tools that we could use with anyone and that you could use too. And we're using them. We're using them to help our clients and their products stand out, right? To make what you say and do interesting. I love helping our clients find a better way to connect with their customers and to do so with clarity. And I found all of this through storytelling. And it's really no surprise. It's how our brains are wired for it. Our society's built on it. It really is a multi-tool. And the good news is you don't need every latest social media tool or platform to find success. Whatever platform you're using, you can use storytelling to make it tastier. It's that secret that I'm about to share. In fact, it's 3 secrets. So one false belief that we hear is that storytelling may be powerful, it may be a great way to communicate, it may be entertaining, but that it's ultimately too hard to apply to our business. Every time I try and go through the hero's journey in my marketing, it's just too complicated. There's too much stuff. There's too much lift. I have enough to worry about already, and it's just too much. That leads us to secret number 1, a quick and easy story hack to increase profitability without learning all the nuances of entertainment storytelling. Another false belief we often hear is that, okay, I'm sold on storytelling, but I still can't create stories that work. My stories don't have a heart. I have so many product details and benefits and features to get across. I can't find, let alone fit in, realistic emotions that make the story interesting. Hence, secret number 3, a way to build and tell confident business stories that connect with the hearts and the minds of your customers. There's a third false belief that we hear is, I get it, Matthew, but I just can't get the support or the political funding because I just can't show how storytelling connects to the business or how our stories all connect together so that all the horses are pulling the wagon in one direction. I just can't get that support. So that leads us to secret number 3, how to tell the right story to connect to your audience, your product, and to move your customers to act and to get you the support you need internally to do so. Let's talk about secret number 1. Take out your pen and your paper, take some notes, because I will walk you through this framework, which I call the 3D story framework. As I mentioned, as I seek to avoid reinventing the wheel wherever possible, and that on the hunt for my existing wheels that maybe existed, they didn't, I found tons of fascinating information and frameworks for storytelling. Fascinating, but heavy and entertainment focused. But why were they like that? They were like that because they were born out of hundreds of years of story crafting in literature and movie industries. Joseph Campbell literally reverse engineered millennia of creative writing to figure out his formula. But again, these were for use in entertainment, in literature. Because books and movies, quite frankly, are just artifacts of what storytelling truly is. And I didn't want entertainment storytelling. I wanted business storytelling, but I couldn't find any how-to for applying business and marketing in a repeatable manner, applying storytelling. And I couldn't find a wheel that did the job, a wheel that worked for the repeatable application of storytelling in business. This just wasn't going to cut it. It was too much. And as we discussed, we're all subjects of the curse of knowledge, coined by Chip and Dan Heath in Made to Stick. This curse makes it hard for non-experts to understand what we simply get. And storytelling is no different. I ran the risk myself of getting sucked into the storytelling curse of knowledge. I was going to be the first customer of our new frameworks. I knew that if I could forge simple frameworks, I could even use it to speed up our own client work. Now, as we've talked about, forging frameworks can be tricky, but I was lucky because when I worked at Microsoft, I created a patent for our customer engagement accelerator, a technology designed to make Microsoft Dynamics even better. I worked with Kelly Rigotti and Fred Studer on this amazing project. Now, creating a patent isn't easy. You have to be very detailed in the technical flow of information, how it's processed, managing outputs, storing data, amongst other things. But what really brought it all together for me was looking through the patent through the lens of storytelling, through the eyes of our hero, our user. And I was lucky to have had this experience. Why? It helped me crystallize a simple story framework. It helped me unlock the true power of a simple business story structure. The good news is that you don't have to go through all the books, the frameworks, and the effort to learn about storytelling and figure out how to apply it in business, because I did it for you. The thing is, I also wanted to retain the interest and excitement of what the entertainment frameworks brought to the artifacts of entertainment storytelling. I also wanted to create a framework that would help with as much with strategy and internal alignment as it did with crafting campaigns, training sales teams, and creating messaging. And I truly believe that great frameworks are empowering. You can take your storytelling destiny in your own hands, even if you don't think you're a natural born storyteller or that you're not wired that way. A simple, practical framework helps marketing, leadership, product management, and even internal politics. So where we live in Seattle is surrounded by water. The archipelago of Puget Sound has over 170 islands. My wife and I have often fantasized about living on one. And recently we saw a property go on sale on Vashon Island. It checked a lot of our boxes. So we booked time that weekend, packed the kids in the car, hopped on the ferry and went over to the house. It was a new construction, but it had issues. The sellers had run out of money and it showed. Now, I've owned 3 homes. My parents owned a 450-year-old farmhouse. Houses are a lot of work, especially when they're 450 years old and made of the same stone as Stonehenge. But if the foundation is good, a house can last 450 years. The house on Vashon was peppered with warning signs, and it reminded me that a great framework is the foundation that all is built on. For business people to benefit from our Salt Simple frameworks without being a storytelling expert would require a few things, these 3 things, in fact. It needed a well-built foundation. It needed to be a simple tool, and it had to be practical to apply repeatedly. Absolutely essential. If you get your storytelling right, you don't have to worry as much about what channel or marketing method you're using. The right business storytelling framework can help you get attention, be heard, and result in your audience taking action, whether that's an internal audience or your customers. The right storytelling framework can be used for internal alignment, for pitching your ideas to your boss, for exploring product strategy, for crafting product messaging, for defining the strategic narrative of your company, and, of course, for your campaigns and your messaging. When you get the foundation right, you go beyond the telling. Campbell and Snyder wanted to help authors and filmmakers craft stories with multiple characters, desires, transformations, and learnings. I want to help you use storytelling in business. Your craft is your unique business. Your craft isn't storytelling. It shouldn't have to be storytelling. Even natural-born storytellers can benefit from structures designed for business people that help with the practical application in business repeatedly. You should be able to enjoy living in a beautiful home without worrying about the state of the foundation, safe in the knowledge that it's well built. By the way, that house eventually sold for 20% less than the list price in the market where bidding wars are driving everything up. Okay, are you ready for it? We've got that first framework right now. Here it is. Go ahead and make it full screen for you. This is our first framework, the 3D framework. It is practical. It is straightforward. It helps you see your story from all angles. Nike's Just Do It really inspired me for these 3 words. Nike's Just Do It packs a whole bunch into just 3 words. And it does it in a way that all that important stuff is represented by those 3 words, even though there's a lot more than just 3 words that people think about when they hear Nike's Just Do It. 3D stands for desire, difficulty, and denouement. I'll get to the fancy French word in a second. In a nutshell, people, your hero, your audience, your customer, want something. That's their desire. Now, you may or may not know what that is yet, but they want something. But life isn't easy, and things tend to stand in the way and crop up as we try to get to what we want. That is difficulty. And I chose the fancy French word denouement because it means the untangling of the knot. What a wonderful metaphor. How was it untangled? With what? Your product. That's with what. Was a specific approach you used? What came together to make it happen? In my story journey, I knew the importance of contrast, change, and transformation. I also knew that every business decision is a transformation, be it big or small. And if people could easily understand the why and the how of another solution to such a transformation, then they could also be persuaded to follow the same path, a path to purchase from you. We designed our 3D story framework to be deceptively simple. a rich microcosm of nuances, details, and context packed into 3 simple words, much like Nike's Just Do It. From all those years as a story interpreter for business, I just knew that if you pulled on the correct threads, you'd extract what was needed to construct a story. Maybe that's why I like that French word denouement so much, the untangling of the knot. A good story puts you in the center of that untangling, and those 3 words do just that. It should come as no surprise that we use the 3D story framework every day in our marketing, even our sales conversations, to best understand our prospective clients. For our clients, we use it for many things, but here's a great example of a landing page above the fold that utilizes the 3D framework. You can see how practical this is. This gets down to brass tacks of applying the power of story in business. And it does it without the baggage of those entertainment frameworks. We've used it to break down value propositions based on our customers' stories in our workshops. We've used it to train the trainer guides with an outside-in perspective. Always keep the customer at the center. And to coach clients on quickly and easily telling stories without the baggage of entertainment storytelling. So while it may be true that we're all natural born storytellers to a greater or lesser degree, it's also true that it's different spinning a yarn about something that happened in your day than it is defining a strategic narrative for a cloud enterprise company. The latter is a little bit more difficult. I love this quote from Ben Horowitz. Storytelling is important, and it does take work. So with the 3D framework, you have an easy on-ramp to understanding and applying storytelling. I'm excited at its simplicity because it means it's easier for you to remember and practice it. We've finally found a way to make using storytelling more accessible to business people. Okay, great. So you've got your story structure down. You're starting to riff out some stories. Stories need emotion. We have to feel a story. Remember earlier, I told you about the framework we developed that helped me infuse emotions into our business storytelling? We're going to go through our framework now that helps with that. I call it the story meet method. It enables you to meet your customers where they are. Now, this might be sounding great, but you might be asking yourself, like, how can I apply all this in a way that truly connects with my customers and moves them to act, right? That's the whole point of all this. So we hear from folks that they get the power of it. And they feel they just don't feel confident though telling the stories with an emotional punch. They say it's hard to humanize and it's hard to create the proper tension in a way that connects with people. Now, while you might get that from going through the very detailed hero's journey, it's just too much. It's why so many business people struggle to apply storytelling with an emotional punch. And eventually they give up on it entirely and leave that opportunity on the table. I experienced this as my time as a story interpreter. I was worried the stories that I was crafting for our clients weren't having an emotional punch. And I agonized over it. I really don't want you to have to agonize over it. When we delivered our first strategic narrative, I was on pins and needles. What would they think about the narrative metaphor I had chosen of an eagle soaring? Would all that crafted to engage emotionally fall flat? Thankfully, they loved it. Getting that emotionally resonant aspect can be really hard. It takes work, and it's kind of counter to a lot of the stuff we deal with day to day in business. I was lucky enough that my grandmother lived in the same village as my parents in her twilight years. This meant I got to see her on my visits back from university. I struggled at university. Maybe it was that bright, shiny object syndrome I talked about. Maybe it was my ADHD and my dyslexia. Either way, I found it challenging. One day on a visit back home, I stopped by my gran for a cup of tea. Ain't no party like my gran's tea party. Some of you might recognize this Flight of the Conchords reference. Matthew, she said, If degrees were easy, they would hand them out after A-levels. A-levels are the equivalent of the last 2 years of high school in the US. And she had a point. She was right. It made me think of my mother's Forge story. And no, I didn't spill the beans to my gran, even all those many, many years later. I did keep my gran's comment in mind, though. Nothing worth working for is a handout. But if I could do the bulk of the hard work, if I could create the hammer and the anvil, then you could then use those to forge. You could use those as that tool to inject emotion into your business stories. I could get you to story success more quickly if I could figure out how to do this. If I could just create that forge, then all you had to do was create the horseshoe. Entertainment story frameworks have a complex, detailed structure. The biggest problem with a complex, detailed structure is that it hampers creativity as you struggle to learn and check all of the boxes. You're not used to these entertainment frameworks, and you quite frankly shouldn't have to be. When you're consumed by learning the framework, it distracts you from something critical to storytelling. And that thing is, quite frankly, the emotions that we're talking about right now. So during the early days of COVID, it hit me. The importance of the right emotions in business storytelling was becoming really apparent. And not all emotions are created equal. In those early days, I was doing my best with the rest of the planet to keep calm and carry on. I was on the hunt for ways to ensure that we respected the intense emotional landscape of the time. Emotions affect everything. Our family love Star Wars. Originals, prequels, sequels, toys. We have more Star Wars Lego than you can shake a stick at, and yes, we tread on it half the time. I've even met George Lucas twice, but that's another story. I remember reading an article about the lightsaber battles in Star Wars, about how the actors had to practice. And for many of them, the sword fighting was an entirely new experience. Each actor brought their character, their own inimitable style to the sword place. It wasn't just parry, block, and slice. There was an emotion to it. And each character is different. Christopher Lee played the character of Count Dooku in the prequels. Swordplay wasn't new for Christopher Lee. He'd played sword fighting roles before many of us were born. In fact, this photo is him in 1973's The Three Musketeers. In Christopher Lee's case, his elegant, classic style was integrated into his Star Wars character. To breathe life into a story, you must infuse technique and science with character, art, and emotion. Just like Christopher Lee breathed life into Count Dooku's lightsaber battling style. The place to start is by asking yourself, what truths in the transformation or change in the world is forcing on your customers? Now, the good news is I created a way for you to quickly add emotion to your stories. And better yet, you don't have to be a creative or literary genius or award-winning director to do so. It's called the Story Meat Method. You can pull this framework out and use it to infuse emotions into your stories and meet your customers where they are, not just rationally, but emotionally too. Okay, are you ready for it? Here it is. If you understand what moves people to act, you can craft things that result in action. Emotions are key to this. And with Meet, you don't need to maintain all of those steps of the hero's journey to access those emotions. It's a simple hack to give you the right emotions to focus on in your story and to do that for any given audience. Morals are your customer's perspective, the good, the bad, or the indifferent. The essential emotions are the feelings that exist for your audience around the topic. And truths are the concepts that your audience holds dear and central to their decision-making, regardless of the topic. It is your iceberg hack to bring emotions to your business stories. Morals, essential emotions, and truths. What Meet enables is a quick way to connect the things that people care about in business So not all emotions are created equal, and only focusing on happiness or sadness isn't specific enough. You must look to the context of your particular audience. Morals shape and guide businesses' culture, office locations, affiliations, donations, even collaboration culture within the company. Essential emotions ooze out of interactions in business: elation for success, fear for career snafus, excitement for ideation and collaboration. Truths frame up a business. Things are just a certain way sometimes. This can be affected by the industry, the founders, the headquarters country, and more. Just start pulling on that thread with the story meet method, and you'll unravel the complex cardigan of emotions in no time, and it'll be a lot easier than following the hero's journey. Okay, you're getting the emotions right in your storytelling builds empathy, which creates the conditions for engagement. I'm so excited to share this simple framework with you so you can now unlock emotions in your business storytelling. There is seriously no greater feeling of success that I get than when we impact people's lives, because it's their business is their life. When your job, right? Your life is in there every single day. When people like Hannah from Am Plus say what she said, seriously, this is a kind of quote that we live for every single day. Remember earlier when I told you about the framework we developed that helped me tell the right stories to bring consistency, all stories to help with internal alignment, support marketing, increase demand and sales, accelerate pipeline? Well, now I'm going to walk you through this framework. I call it the TRIPS storytelling methodology. I love storytelling, and like you, I was committed to making it work. When that chief storyteller role was offered to me, I was excited. I thought I understood it enough, storytelling that is, to bring its power into business. But I quickly found that my efforts were met with blank stares. Kurt Von who? That's about the time I went to look for those business storytelling frameworks, but came up short. The problem was, I also wasn't happy with what I was finding out about the importance of storytelling. A quick Google shows plenty of people explaining storytelling and how it works, even the why of how our brains work on and with story. There's actually precious little on the why of storytelling, let alone through actual storytelling itself. Seriously, go Google storytelling. Hit I'm lucky. You'll probably land on this HubSpot article. Save it for later. Now, not to throw HubSpot under the bus or anything, but when you read it later, you will notice a few things. Not only is it not structured on story, there's also no stories to be found anywhere within it. Now, I'm sure you've realized by now why I went on this mission and that I have a lot more work to do. Hopefully, you're going to join me on it. The power of story goes far beyond the content of storytelling. We can literally use it to shape the world. I remember in January of 2017, as I sat with my wife on the sofa, talking about what to call the company. We landed on Go Narrative as a name for the business. A couple reasons. Firstly, I wanted to convey action and achievement, right? Business is about stuff happening, hence Go. And while the 3D story framework helps you with crafting a story, and the story meet method is a quick, reliable way to find the most appropriate emotions, I needed to find a way to tie all of that together and ensure it was rooted in the business, and to help our clients build authenticity into everything the company says and does. That is beyond mere storytelling. That is narrative. And that's why I selected that second word for Go Narrative. Narrative is about the big picture. For example, your favorite movie includes a collection of stories that accrue up to the overall narrative of the film. But I had two fundamental questions when it came to business. Firstly, how do we create authenticity? By tying all of those stories together with a golden thread and deeply to the business. This led me to a second and more profound question. How do we ensure the stories we tell are the right stories? Stories that matter for the business. stories that drive action in the business whilst feeding that authenticity. I hope you're starting to see that business has different demands of storytelling than movies and books. In those early days of solving the business storytelling problem, I became hooked. I spent much time geeking out on storytelling. You might recall how I kept running into problems trying to get the business to benefit from storytelling back when I was at Microsoft. I remember going to my general manager and trying to go through all the stages of the hero's journey. Didn't go well. I don't recommend it. You can almost taste the curse of knowledge, right? Most business people are just simply too busy to remember all of that on top of their products, services, marketing campaigns, sales plans, partner events, office politics, and where you put that spreadsheet that you need for your forecasting. And that's just the storytelling part, right? How about crafting a narrative that ties everything together? You're probably wondering, how do I get started? That's the paradox of storytelling. That's where it manifests. What is this paradox you talk of, Matthew? The paradox is a simple truth that storytelling isn't storytelling, not what we think of storytelling as storytelling. And if you just focus on entertainment storytelling, you won't get the most out of storytelling. Bit crazy, right? So the driving force that results in the telling of stories is how our brain works, and precisely how it works in relation to getting along and getting ahead in society, as Will Storr says in The Science of Storytelling. The paradox doesn't end there. Remember, even with this thing that is so natural and simple that we can use it every day, just like salt, it's also tricky enough that application in business constantly results in the salt getting spilt. In most cases, people only end up dabbling, sprinkling a little story into some presentations and maybe a bit of content. I love how Mike Maddock cites the "you can't see the label from inside the jar." I want to help you get out of the jar, to see the big picture. Think of your favorite movie again. There are all those stories within it that all weave together to form a narrative. And there's a moral or a metaphor that encapsulates it all. But when you first watched the movie, you didn't know that. You were in the jar, consuming each story as it was served up to you. In The Wizard of Oz, the narrative is that one's true purpose is found within oneself. There's no place like home. And Dorothy was there all along. The stories of the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion all accrued up to that narrative. They had what they sought all along. Think of a brick wall. Now, imagine that wall not as multiple bricks, but as a single thin wall made out of fired clay. Such a wall is never made. Why? It's weak. When you have multiple bricks connected by mortar, it's stronger. It's to do with how the forces all act on each other brick by brick, all those around them, and ultimately around the whole wall itself. It enhances its strength. A narrative is like mortar. It holds all your stories together. And together, they are more robust. What makes up that mortar in business? Well, when you're prospecting for the inputs to your narrative, you need to extract story insights from employees, customers, partners, founders, and you need to look at the context the stories are happening within, the changing world, trends, facts, hopes, dreams, and potential outcomes. The transformation, there's always transformation going on in the world. And that exerts pressure on people. How they navigate that change to a successful outcome becomes their story. And these are the raw materials for themes and connections that inform a narrative. This is more than just storytelling. And this is the problem with the paradox. People just see it often for entertainment, right? It's why people often only get as far as learning how to apply storytelling to presentations. They don't see it as something deeply connected to the business. But what if you had a way to guide your leadership team and your colleagues through the narrative elements in a language they understand that gets the type of outcomes that storytelling promises to help the whole business benefit from the power of story structure? That's what I was able to uncover. A way to create a strategic narrative rooted in the business. Again, not without having to memorize entertainment story frameworks. You don't have to learn the hero's journey, reinforcing that. But ultimately getting more out of storytelling for business than just presentations or messaging. And that's what I want to help you unlock. So this is our TRIPS storytelling methodology. You might be familiar with the quote, "Any sufficiently advanced technology looks like magic." Well, that's what this framework felt like. And getting excited to share it with you because it not only brings a consistency and authenticity to the stories our clients tell, it's also able to shape business itself. There's a magical feeling in authenticity and alignment that our narrative frameworks bring to your business. But it's even more than that. We were able to use the narrative framework as a sort of X-ray to see inside of our clients' businesses from outside in. For somebody who had been championing customers and outside in thinking for decades, it made so much sense to me. If you could see the business and break it down in a framework rooted in storytelling, you would have the tool to create a narrative for that business. This is the secret that ties it all together. The fact that your company's strategy is deeply linked to your story. As Ben Horowitz says, in good companies, the story and the strategy are the same thing. He goes on to say that the output of all that work and all that strategy is the story, and the execution ultimately of your customers through a journey of transformation that you help with is their story. A strategy without a story is an incomplete strategy. Is your strategy incomplete? Okay, you ready for it? We have the narrative framework right here, right now. With the TRIPS storytelling methodology, we can ensure those stories all have a common foundation, are deeply connected to the business, and drive action. TRIPS is an acronym. So what does it stand for? The T stands for transformation. What change is going on in the world? How is that affecting companies, governments, people, your customers? This is the why of you embarking on this mission in the first place. It's why you invented the product you invented, or developed the new business plan, or crafted that marketing campaign. R is reasons to believe. What are the market facts, trends, data, support, and all that provides evidence of the transformation? And those aren't disconnected from another important reason, and that is the aspiration, the end state that your customers want to get to. What do they want to achieve? What is that? That's the head and the heart of reasons to believe. Innovations or secret sauce, the transformation winning tool that you bring to the table. Why you? Why your company? Problems, that transformation is going to impose with a solution, overcoming the roadblocks that crop up along the way. These are all problems that have to be overcome, and you need to understand what those are so that you can tell the stories of those problems, the stories of the transformation, the stories of how you invented your innovation, and the stories around the reason to believe. Anecdotes, metaphors, anything that represents the transformation and overcoming it. The reality is, all of this stuff can happen naturally. Not all the time, but it can. When a particularly smart entrepreneur is so passionate about solving a big, hairy business problem, they will likely go through these steps subconsciously and exude that to their small team, and everybody just gets it. It's why unicorns exist. But without an approach, it's rolling the dice. I didn't even really invent this methodology. I discovered it. I uncovered it. Joseph Campbell reverse engineered the hero's journey from millennia of literature. It was through the strategic messaging foundation work and story interpreting that I discovered the patterns of stories and narratives in business. Then I codified it in a repeatable tool for you. Now, as I said, this process can happen naturally. That doesn't mean that it will, right? So when you craft narratives with the TRIPS storytelling methodology, you're going to frame your strategy and your transformation, how it relates to the market. You'll harvest the proper inputs for your stories. You'll have a golden thread that ties everything together. To mix metaphors, that's the mortar we talked about. And then our 3D story framework, you can use that to create stories to connect your narrative consistently and repeatedly. And with the story meat method, you can find the right emotions to include in the stories so that they connect and move your audience to act. The TRIP storytelling framework is our North Star for outside in focus, consistency, and repeatability. In our business, we use this both internally and externally. Internally, we use it to shape our own narrative and guide the work that we do for our clients. Externally, we use the TRIP storytelling methodology to diagnose a new client, craft our materials, and coach them on the process. Plus, we use it to provide a baseline for creating their strategic narrative. For example, we'll run a workshop with a client, extract their inputs for each of the TRIPS elements. Then we'll test, research, and expand on those concepts. We use this to identify cultural and meta-narratives that can then be used as narrative metaphors to accelerate understanding for your business. These narrative metaphors, along with that foundation and the stories based on our 3D framework, are then used to craft a strategic narrative. One ring to bind them all. Customers have achieved things like that 40% increase in registrations for their event series by implementing our complete approach. This is our golden thread. This is our one ring that binds everything together. And after we applied our frameworks, we saw deal sizes 10x what they were before. The engagements included multiple of our storytelling services and, of course, our favorite deliverable, the strategic narrative. I'm thrilled. My journey with storytelling went from entertainment stories and the hero's journey to brain science and the cogs of society. I learned that storytelling wasn't just to do with the telling of stories or even just a way of being interesting and engaging. I learned that there is a process that is fundamentally linked to how our brain works, how we see the world, how we communicate, and even the problem solving on which we embark. It fuels our life and the businesses we run. I also learned how to align narratives to business and create a narrative that connects to a human understanding of the world as a bridge to your product or service. I learned how to use these narratives to intentionally create stories that align and inspire people to act. Now, you have the secret to unlock storytelling for your business. You will create energy and interest for your program, your campaign, even your storytelling initiative itself. You will build alignment. You will get people on board. It's on that energy that you can then engineer large-scale, meaningful narratives and campaigns that convert and trigger that right mix of hormone release at scale. This is storytelling for action. So let me ask you a question. If you followed what I said in secret number 1 and started quickly crafting and telling compelling, practical business storytelling, and then you did what I showed you in secret number 2 and ensured those business stories connect with the hearts and move customers to act, and then you use what I shared in secret number 3 to tie all of your stories and actions together via a narrative framework that is aligned to your business, do you think you could be more successful? Do you think you could drive more demand and accelerate your sales pipe? How many of you are feeling pretty excited right now? Pretty cool, right? How many maybe feeling a little overwhelmed because we've covered so much? Drinking from a higher fire hose, right? I get it. It's impossible to go over everything in a 60-minute presentation. I had some presenting for action coaching one time, and the coach said, you can't cover everything. You know a lot about your brand, your product, your specific service, and all of the features it has. Your job in a presentation is to show people the next action they must take and have them committed to doing so. Stories do the same. They show your customer what that next action to take is. Storytelling for action. And I want to help you with it. If you could take these ideas and run with it, that's awesome. And of course, we are here to help. That's why we're launching the Storytelling for Action pack. and here it is. You can be one of the first people to get access to our Storytelling for Action pack. Sign up at this link. All you need to start applying storytelling in business. 6 playbooks, a 12-part course covering all the elements of our frameworks and how to apply it. Templates to use with you and your team, lifetime access to our virtual clinic, a bonus customer advocacy pack, and our mission to help you harness the power of storytelling for business without relying on entertainment frameworks. Storytelling for Action is for you if you're an entrepreneur, a marketer, or an executive looking to get attention, be heard, and sell more. We will help you challenge the status quo to find a better way to clarity. So sign up today, www.gonarrative.com/SFA, and you will be one of the first to hear of Storytelling for Action's general availability. And as a bonus, you will get access to our weekly business storytelling tips newsletter. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited for Storytelling for Action. It's massive. I'm just so excited for what you can do with it. I'll stick around for a few minutes to answer questions and fire the chat up here. And don't worry if you can't think of any right now. We'll be back at the same time next week. Come and get a refresher, ask your questions then, or ping us and reach out to us. Okay, so let's see here. Why don't you have heroes or things like that in your frameworks? Oops. Well, we don't have heroes and stuff like that in our frameworks because it's embedded in desire. Remember that? Desire doesn't stand alone. That's why I talk about the Nike's Just Do It. Desire needs a person to breathe life into it. Desire doesn't exist in a vacuum, and that person is your hero, your audience, your customer. It's also why we don't talk about context or backstory. Storytelling for Action includes hacks to really help you just easily remember storytelling, easy to remember framework, so you can start applying it immediately. That's why we've avoided packing too many other terms in, and in particular, why we've avoided film and literature terms as much as humanly possible. Oh, this is a funny follow-up question. Well, why do you talk about Hollywood? Well, we talk about Hollywood and literature to help show you the difference between the two. And quite frankly, the $100 billion industry, the entertainment industry, is a proof point for all of us that storytelling is powerful, but applying it to business, that's the real trick. So we talk a bit about filmmaking and the hero's journey, but we don't actually get into the details of it, right? Hopefully you saw that today. What's the difference between transformation and change? Kind of the same thing. We tend to think about transformation at the bigger, kind of the meta, the big picture, and change being more about the smaller micro changes that happen along the way, even within a story itself. What do I need to remember about story arcs in the hero's journey? You don't. They work great for entertainment. If you're writing a script, you're going to want that level of detail. You know, if you spend all day, every day creating keynote presentations, you're probably going to end up getting down into the hero's journey at some point. Nancy Duart's book, by the way, resonates really good for helping with presentations. So, but most folks don't need to worry about that. It's highly likely that you're one of the 99% that doesn't need to worry about that. Okay. It's the biggest mistake business people make with storytelling. There's two. One is not really understanding what it is, and the other is it's really in making sure that you have the why and the what, right? The problem I have with people talking about storytelling when it's not storytelling is it sells both things short. It sells their marketing strategy short, and it sells storytelling short. And plus, if you throw a term around and people think they know what it means, but it isn't what they think it means, they're leaving that on the table, right? They're leaving that tool on the table. And that's why I care about that so much. Cool. Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much for stopping by today. We are going to be back here. Might be a bit later next week due to a client video we're filming. But we're really excited to have you stop by, ask any more questions, shoot us. You can shoot us an email. You can pop up, have a chat with our storybot on the website. Don't hesitate to reach out. If you take everything you've learned today and start applying it, you're going to make progress. If we can help with storytelling for action or anything else, those are all just things to help raise you up. So thank you so much for stopping by. This has been a lot of fun. Can't wait to continue the conversation and the journey with you. And thank you for your time. Have a great day.